It has been said that ethics evolved because societies that adapted them flourished more than those who didn't. On the surface, this is reasonable. A deeper look reveals this is not actually possible, however. The key to this error is in the method. Evolution is a step-by-step process that is based on minor improvements that survive beyond beyond other genes. In essence, a more selfish gene always wins. The goal of evolution is not to create successful societies, but instead to have successful individuals. When a person has children, he isn't creating a society, but rather an individually successful gene. Let us put it another way. The most successful individual is not the one that abides morally in a moral society. Rather, the successful individual is the one that convinces everyone else to live morally, while he preys on their selflessness to get further ahead. The gene that succeeds in surviving to the finish is the one that deceives everyone else into serving them, while pretending it is to their advantage. In other words, the success of the moral gene is actually an illusion that only dies to protect the selfish gene. Those sacrificial genes do not get passed on. They sacrifice themselves in the name of ethics, and then the genealogy ends, while the selfish gene reaches the top and keeps surviving by manipulating others. Selfless genes always die off because of the selfish genes. Selfless genes always die off because of the selfish genes. You cannot suddenly convert selfish genes into selfless genes. A survival of the fittest world cannot evolve into a moral world through the evolution of genes. Complex thinking, like ethics, requires freedom of thought apart from genetics. It requires that we resist our genetic programming and consider what group system benefits everyone the most. Evolution doesn't care about societies, only individual success, since those genes pass on. The big issue with the evolution of free thought is that it is detrimental for individual survival. Stopping to contemplate the meaning of life is detrimental to individual survival. The most successful gene is optimally programmed to quickly respond to situations in the optimal way. Philosophy is detrimental to individual survival. Complex thinking that creates societies is contrary to evolution. Let us consider how evolution would actually happen. One life form needs to eat another to survive. The genes that are selfish survive because they prey on others. Those that do not evolve this selfish gene do not survive. Even the herbivores must compete. The strongest hoards the resources and wins the genetic competition. The others do not. One day a gene evolves philosophical reasoning. Instead of preying on another, it chooses mercy. It then starves to death, and its gene disappears. Another gene evolves philosophical thinking. Another life form takes advantage of this to exploit it into handing over its resources, and then also consumes the naive philosopher. The selfish gene reproduces, and the philosophical individual dies off. Eventually individuals evolve into mankind, but the selfish gene has fundamentally established itself in the genetics. Every time a philosopher arises, a more prudent individual exploits them. Benevolence can never integrate itself into society because more selfish individuals always exploit their weaknesses. The benevolent become slaves while the selfish become rulers. Any slave that tries to oppose the authority gets executed, so the slaves remain benevolent. There can never be an uprising because the selfish become stronger and the benevolent become weaker. The genes become more extremely divided so that it can never change. Benevolent remain weak and passive, while the selfish become stronger and more aggressive. This is not what we see, however. There are consistent rebellions in the lower levels. All rebellions should have been completely removed. All the rebellious should have been removed. All philosophical genes would have caved into passive genes incapable of resistance. Free will cannot exist in an evolutionary system. Here is where free will makes sense: pursuit of ideals. It makes complete sense when it was given to us in order that we can be either good or evil, and warrant judgments and rewards. In that context, free will for the sake of justice and meaning. Free will is against evolution, but it is perfect for a creator system.